Yes, the struggle
What I will
continues.
do is, I think I'll just continue because I know you
If
guys,
you would.
you have your own little schedules, and that's important to continue to follow. So just I will go ahead and share with you the presentation without so much as showing you the slides that come with it. So making our connections matter essentially is the essence of this presentation. So making the winter joyful while actually caring for a loved one with dementia. So just so you know, again, with what I'm covering is I'm covering the importance of activity, making leisure activities work for the person with dementia, as well as yourselves and your or as care partners, and choosing activities. So going about how is it that I can choose the right activity for my person? What kind of options are available out there? And lastly, just some principles to keep in mind when you're actually choosing an activity. So that's another important feature. So appreciating that everything we do in a day is an activity, and each activity has a different purpose in our life and is more or less important to each of us. So we can break activities down to 3 types. And those 3 types are grooming. So an example of grooming would be brushing our hair or washing our face. The industry part, so that's number 2, that's another type of activity. So that includes maybe sweeping the floor or helping prepare a meal. And lastly, you have the leisure and entertainment piece as a type of activity that we can engage individuals in. So that's the fun stuff like dancing or playing an instrument. So those are all types of activities that we can engage, that we all can engage in. So the benefits of activity, and when we consider the benefits of activity, we're looking at they can improve the dignity and self-esteem of an individual. So without activity, you may lack that, right? And then giving pleasure and a sense of purpose. So you know in yourselves, whatever activity that you embrace, most of the time you're going to navigate to an activity that does give you pleasure and purpose in life, even if it is just washing the dishes or sweeping the floor, right? It structures time and it normalizes our life. So the fact, like I use the example of grooming. So when you get up in the morning, maybe you're washing your face or brushing your teeth, and that's your typical routine of your morning, right? Before you head on down the hall and turn on the kettle to make yourself a cup of coffee or whatever the case may be. It can provide also some comfort and attachment when you're doing an activity. And lastly, and probably almost one of the most important things, is it really capitalizes on your strengths and abilities. You can gloat about what it is that you're capable of doing, right? Like, I have this ability to do this. So you can imagine for a person living with dementia, if they can capitalize on an activity that they can do well, they're going to navigate to that activity more frequently because it does give them that sense of fulfillment. It captures all of those things that I've just shared with you. So really, so now the point of staying safe, I guess, from coronavirus and reducing our risk of infection, dementia itself can make following really the guidance on social distancing and hygiene harder. So the person with dementia may not understand what the guidance means, right? Or they forget what the rules are, because certainly their short-term memory is compromised, or they become confused by a change in routine. And certainly, for any of you that may be supporting a person living with dementia, you can appreciate that maybe at the beginning of these lockdowns, way almost a year ago now, that there was a complete disruption in their routine for ones that may have attended day away programs or various social activities in the community, and how important that was for them in the course of their day or their week. So that disruption in routine can add to confusion for them. Become disorientated. So they may become disorientated in shops and in public areas that are less busy or actually have been adapted to aid social distancing. So, you know, those little arrows that you're supposed to follow, or those spots on the tiles that say, okay, you have to stand here, and then you move ahead into this little spot. So if you are a care partner, there are things you can do to really help keep you both safe at home and in the community. And those are really just explaining the guidance clearly to the person in really just a calm, matter-of-fact way. And it might help to actually point out that this advice is from the public health unit or our government or the doctor, because in some ways they may, then it's like, oh, because hearing it from you just doesn't have the same effect, right? But if it's coming from the doctor, then, oh, that means something. So they're more likely to maybe follow that direction, or it resonates with them a little more. So some communication tips that might help when supporting the individual is really just standing or sitting where the person can see and hear you as clearly as possible. And this is maybe assuming that you are within that person's bubble. So maybe that person lives in your home with you. So you don't have to wear that mask. So usually this will be in front of the person. And the reason why you want to be in front of the person, I'll just tell you very briefly that the way the disease impacts an individual's visual field is that their peripheral vision is distorted. They may not see things to their side. So if you stand directly in front of them, not over them, but at eye level with them. So maybe it's sitting with them, or like I said, you could stand beside them as they're standing to provide them with that information. So really just essentially trying to be at eye level with the individual rather than standing over them, and be as close to the person as is comfortable for you both, so that you can clearly hear each other and make eye contact, just like you would anybody else. So communicating clearly and calmly, and go at a slightly slower pace. And the reason why I say that is, if you could see the brain of an individual with Alzheimer's disease, you would then appreciate that why it may take an individual a little bit longer to process the information that you're telling them. Because what's happening because of the disease process is the brain is atrophying. It's getting smaller. Brain cells are being destroyed. So the message isn't getting to other neurons, other brain cells so easily. So it takes a while for the message to actually get where it needs to go. And that person is, you know, trying to process this information. So giving some pause, adjusting your conversation to give that person an opportunity to process that information is important. And using short, simple sentences is certainly helpful. Okay, so what another tip might be is not to talk to the person as you would to a child. Certainly, this person is not 5 years old. They're not 10 years old. They're not 15 years old, and they won't appreciate it if you're treating them that way, right? I've lived a full life, thank you very much, and I don't appreciate you talking to me like I'm somebody who doesn't know anything, right? So they are an adult, and it is very important for us to keep that in mind. So allow time between sentences for the person to process, as I said, that information, and give them an opportunity to respond. Try to communicate with the person in really a conversational way. So rather than asking question after question, it's just, giving them a quiet, intimate, engaging conversation. Try to let the person complete their own sentences. And so for any of you that are supporting a person living with dementia, I'm assuming that you know this person and you know this person well, because you've known them for a long time. So you're able to pick up on maybe subtle signs that they're getting frustrated or angry. So I strongly encourage you to pick up on the individual's body language and, then interject to support them, or even ask them, do you want some help with finding that right word before you interject? So, where a lot of times I get that question of, when is it okay to provide that information? Am I jumping the gun here? So it really is, it's okay to ask the person living with dementia. They still are a person, and they still have that ability to tell you whether or not that's frustrating to them or not. So include the person in conversation with others as well. It is important not to speak as though they aren't there. So if you have maybe you're outside having a social distance visit, and there's a couple of friends that are there, to ensure that those friends also include the person with dementia. And that's the important piece of sharing the diagnosis with others, and sharing some of the tips and strategies on how we can communicate effectively with the person with dementia, so that you can include them. So those people that you're sharing the diagnosis with may also be able to help you with activities that we will talk more about as well, if they're following specific guidelines. So if the person becomes tired, if you find that they tire easily, then really just shorten conversations, or postpone the activity or the conversation for a later time. And so what I often tell people is, if you are wanting to do, I see a little tail wagging in the
He's getting old.
If you are wanting to engage that a person in conversation or in an activity, call them. If it's a friend that doesn't live in the same household as you, ask the care partner, what is the best time of day to connect with this person? When is this person, I kind of say, when do they have their sunny moments in the day, right? Is it when they first wake up in the morning, or would it be after lunch or after a nap? Or when do you notice is the best time to engage the individual? And you and I, we can all probably agree that we have certain moments in the day where we function much better too. So it's just maybe that person with dementia isn't able to tell us that. So it's good to communicate with others who want to be a part of that individual circle of support, which time of day is best to engage the individual. Certainly prompts can help to communicate a message. So for instance, like pointing at a photo of someone, or encouraging the person to hold and interact with an object you are talking about. So, check out the activity kits that West Grey Library has put together, and you'll see that some of these activity kits have tactile objects in them as well. And that, just just having even something soft, an object soft, in that kit could remind that individual of a cat they used to have. And then they start talking about this cat that they used to have. So, and that actually, when you think about that, an activity such as that, if you were a friend or a family member that was just calling up maybe your mom, who's supporting your father with dementia, and you knew that your mom had this activity kit, and you asked mom to pull out the activity kit, and dad pulls out this, like I said, this soft blanket, and he starts talking about the cat, then you can talk about the cat over Zoom. So it doesn't even have to be that you're present at the time, right? And that conversation could last for a good 30 minutes, just depending on the day. How good of a day is it for dad today? You know, and even if it only lasts for 5 minutes, don't feel as though that wasn't a quality visit, because really at the end of the day, it's how you make that person feel, right? They don't remember that they've only spent 5 minutes with you. They're not like looking at the clock, but they certainly will remember how you make them feel. So don't count that out. Certainly, again, just try to make sure your body language is open and very relaxed, and avoid that speaking sharply or raising your voice to the individual, because they certainly will pick up. They'll pick up on those little vibes that are coming through, and that's basically because of their difficulty with their language, right? The difficulty in that communication of understanding language and how it's coming across. So they're picking up on the tone and rhythm and your body language. They're really paying close attention to that. We often think that they understand what we're saying, but what they're really listening to is that body language, or what they're really paying attention to is that body language. So that's really important. When knowing those communication tips is really important if you're trying to engage individuals with an activity. So I thought that was important to mention for you all. So the rules allow everyone to go out for certain reasons. When we think about the social distancing and dementia guidelines around COVID-19. So people with dementia often have a need or a want to walk. And physical exercise is good for all of us for many reasons. So even as a care partner, I would encourage you to get out and go for a walk with the person. And I do have to say that oftentimes, depending on my schedule during the day, but I myself will go for a walk at lunch hour, and I'm still going into the office because my internet at home is terrible. But so I come into the office, and we're not that far away from Harrison Park. So I'll walk around Harrison Park, and it is lovely. In fact, one day I ran into a couple that is a client of ours, and it was a gray, dreary, kind of a rainy day. And they were both out walking. And she said to me, "This is for our mental health." So, you know, it really doesn't matter like what kind of weather it is outside. The importance is what this does to you, like how this makes you feel at the end of that little walk or excursion. And in having gone out, I mean, she wouldn't have gotten to see me, of course, but but other people along the way too, right? So it just makes you feel so much better. So social distancing, keeping away from anyone that's not in your household. It may certainly be harder for persons with dementia because they may forget that. So as well as, you know, considering that individuals may be unsettled if some people have their faces covered. Of course, they rely a lot on what our expressions are saying. They find it difficult to wear a face covering themselves. And that can be also very hard for you as a care partner to explain to others, or have to explain all the time to others. Find that there are the usual route is closed off because of COVID-19 regulations. So I'm just thinking of, again, the grocery store, or, even the little cafe down the road from our office. When you walk in, it's now kind of restructured so that you have to navigate like a little, I don't know, turnabout in order to get your coffee, which would be unusual, right? It's not something they're accustomed to. So that could be kind of like, whoa, what are we getting into here? They may be confused by unfamiliar signs, or as I said, those floor markings. And they may want to just be closer to other people than they should be. Again, not remembering what those guidelines say. And just appreciate that they may feel lonely, and go up and approach someone to have a chat, but again, forgetting that. And those are, it could be an individual with dementia that doesn't have a support system in place. So they may be just out for a walk, and they feel lonely, and they see somebody and go up to them to have a chat, but of course have forgotten all of those social distancing rules. So keeping that in mind. So I guess also keeping in mind when we think about doing activities with individuals is just following really good hygiene. So the coronavirus, of course, can survive on surfaces for several hours, they say. So it's a good idea to regularly clean items that are touched often, things like remote controls and telephones and kitchen taps and door handles. And if the person with dementia has memory problems or is confused, they may struggle with actually remembering good hygiene. So just trying to use some of these tips might be helpful for you. Is printing out reminder posters and putting them up near the hand basin. It could be that you use digital devices to get reminders, such as it's time to wash our hands. And all of that may seem, whoa, that sounds a little extreme, but it may actually be quite helpful for the individual. Wash hands with the person's encouragement, and that may be just singing a song. So, as you're washing your hands, you're singing the song. And I think we heard quite a bit of that at the beginning of the pandemic, the songs that you could sing that would last for 20 seconds while you're washing your hands, and ensuring that that's a long enough time. Break the task down into simple steps for the individual to follow. If you list off the steps that are required, it becomes overwhelming for the person too. So they may not remember by the time it gets to step 4 what they're supposed to be doing. And focus on the details and senses. Just talk to the person while hand washing. And that could be, talking to them about, does this remind you of being back at school or at work? I mean, maybe that person was a healthcare professional and they always had to wash their hands, right? So does that remind you of that activity? Does the smell of the soap bring back memories? So if you have that scented soap, then that could evoke some memories. Taking note of what's going on immediately around them. So just living in the moment, like this can really help to relieve, I guess, some of that anxiety. Certainly avoid criticism of any errors. Just offering encouragement of praise when they're doing the activity. So in practical ways, when we think about even in any activity that you're doing, it may help to just use traditional methods. So when we're thinking about washing those hands, the traditional method may be using bar soap as opposed to the pump soap, right? That's what they're comfortable with. They've used that. Appreciating that the contrast in the sink, the different color to the sink, that person can identify that, oh, okay, that's the sink. Because if the sink matches the counter, then where exactly is the sink, right? And oftentimes, I'll tell you a little story. In a public bathroom, for example, you get the same color. So the stalls are the same color as the wall, the floor and the toilet are the same color. Everything seems to mesh, like it's all relatively the same tones. So if the individual's in there, how do I get out of this bathroom? Which door do I use to get out of this bathroom? When we think about building a dementia-friendly community, even the simplest thing like putting on the exit door that it's this way out could mean the difference for a person living with dementia. And labeling items like the liquid soap pump. So this is soap, so because all of that stuff can be, it's all foreign, right? To an individual with dementia who maybe had grown up with the bar of soap and so forth. And this is a new environment. Okay. So then, okay, staying active, the staying active piece. So many people living with dementia certainly have told us they're worried about losing skills or independence during lockdown. So even though there are many restrictions to our normal life, keeping active will certainly help with dementia and help that person live better and remain more independent for a longer period of time. So that's why, when I just so am happy with West Grey Library that they've created these activity kits, because that's stimulation for an individual with dementia, right? That stimulation is what they need to delay the progression of the disease process. It keeps their brains active. So we have really lots of ideas for you and the person to find ways of being active while actually staying safe. And these include things like physical activity, as I mentioned. So that might be just going outdoors and going for a walk, or staying indoors and doing an activity. So it might be participating in our Minds in Motion session, which encompasses a degree of physical activity, but also that intellectual activity. There's just staying mentally active. So really by trying an activity, and that's that could be online or off, or maybe even learning a new skill. And I should tell you that even though individuals with dementia do suffer from that short-term memory loss, if they are to do an activity over and over again, if you break it down in steps, that gets stored into their procedural memory. So, and a simple example of that would be folding a face cloth. So initially, you may have them just folding that face cloth in half. Okay, and so that's the first step you get them to do. So you have I don't know, 20 face cloths, and you get them to help you fold the laundry. So they're folding the face cloth for you. They just fold it in half, and then next week they got that down. Awesome, really good job. Thank you for your help. Then you take it to the next step, and now they've folded in half. Now they're going to fold it into quarters, right? So now you're adding another step to the folding. So they, again, that gets stored into the procedural memory, and they're capable of now helping you fold your dishcloths. So breaking down a task. So if you're introducing them to something new, it's, you know, step by step, as opposed to all at once, giving them that activity to do. The social activity, so just by staying connected to others close to you. And oftentimes, like I gave you, I think that was a lovely example of connecting over Zoom, over the, you know, the activity kit, and they've pulled out this, and oh, you know, what does that feel like exactly? Oh, it feels like my cat that I used to have. And so you're engaging them with conversation that way. So usually the whole outcome of the activity may be something totally different than the activity itself that you set up, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, what does this activity leave this person feeling like at the end of it, right? So sometimes I even say for grandchildren, so maybe an example, if your grandchild is quite musical and is learning how to play the violin, then, you know, contact grandpa and, you know, show him what you can do on your violin, you know. And again, it may be just 5 minutes that you have his attention for, but maybe the next day it'll be 30 minutes that you have his attention for. I also want to add that don't give up on the person. So even if you've tried something once and you thought, oh, you know, that wasn't very successful, don't throw it away. It's still a possibility that that person may like it. So give it more than one go to prove its success. So certainly remember to involve the person in choosing what they can do. And so I'll go back to the activity kits. So there may be a number, I'm not sure, Kim, how many activities are within your kits, but certainly there's 2 for sure.
we have 9 to 10 activities in each kit,
There
and
you
we've
go.
broken them down through activity. So in fact, we do have tea towels in one of ours, 12 tea towels for folding.
Oh.
We have a fabric box in the other kit so that they are also folded, but they can also be put in patterns, colors. You can make things, you know, just make designs with them. And then we include puzzles and games for the recreational aspect. I was really interested in the grooming aspect. We kind of tried to cover industry and recreation, but grooming seemed one that we couldn't really touch. So we do have books in there with images so that people can do. There's one on a book of dogs. There's another that's a book of the colors of Canada, some of the colors of food. So they're mostly linked in 2 dimensions so that it could be food, but it can also be color. And then we have things like puzzles and games.
Okay, so there's lots to choose from.
Yeah, there should be.
And so what's important here is when you're wanting to sit down and do an activity with the person, is provide a choice, but only provide a choice of 2, right? Because any more than 2 would seem overwhelming to the person. So would you like to do the puzzle today? Or would you like to help me fold this laundry? So, you know, you're providing the individual with choice. Otherwise, it seems like you're, again, telling them what to do, right? Which, how does that make you feel? I don't need to be told what to do, thanks, right? So make it enjoyable and meaningful and really based on their usual interests and preferences. So again, you know your person best. What is it you think that will spark their interest? So, and actually that may surprise you again, that you may, the person may have never done the laundry and then all of a sudden is thinking, yeah, I would like to help fold the laundry. So it might actually surprise you. So have a sense of purpose. Having a sense of purpose may also bring more meaning to the days that might otherwise seem very, very long and empty. And it may also ease feelings of course, that stress and that anxiety or the low mood that we're feeling. It's kind of like, I don't know if any of you have ever had this where you you get that spark of recognition in somebody's eyes, and it's a little glimmer, and how that makes you feel when you've connected to somebody. So if you have that feeling and they have that feeling, it makes you feel really, really good, right? So you both leave with that sense of satisfaction.
So Sandra, we don't have a ton of time left, but I'm
Okay.
interested in hearing from you what your clients have said have been, I mean, the walking part, we've got a really clear picture that that's a very compelling and useful and valuable experience in a number of ways. So physically and socially, potentially. Are there other, say, 3 activities that you say, you know, if you run out of ideas, keep these in your back pocket because they've been successful with a variety of different clients, or they're something that virtually anyone can do without special skill or training, or it's something that really manages to pull people out at the last minute when they're really feeling sort of discouraged or having a bad day?
So sometimes just if you have a button jar,
Oh,
and it could be that you need to sort some buttons. And it could be from the care partner's perspective that she's just having, or he is just having a particularly stressful day and needs to have a break from their person living with dementia. As I said, individuals really just like to have a sense of purpose in their life. And they're really lost as to how to get started. So you pull out your button jar and you start sorting the buttons, and then of course your person may be watching you, and you could say, would you like to help? So always say, offer that invitation, would you like to help me sort these buttons? And then, you know, it could be that I'm looking for blue buttons, or I'm looking for white buttons, and they can then play with all of these buttons, and it doesn't matter whether they've mixed the blue with the white or the red or whatever, because eventually they may just do that. It's just the fact that they're engaged in activity, and again, they feel like they're doing something purposeful. I think another one that is, again, is something that if you're trying to maintain that social distance, but you still want to engage in your person living with dementia. So maybe it's a father or mother or an aunt or whatever. Maybe it's a neighbor. Is what we have. I've looked into these conversation cards. And the conversation cards are maybe just something that, you know, tell me about the first time you drove a car, or rode a bicycle, or you know, what was it like raising, what was your happiest memory of raising children? So that could be an engaging activity that you could do with them. And sometimes it doesn't really, we also have to appreciate that activities don't always have to be active activities. They don't always have to be active. So it could just be a passive activity. And what you could do is, again, you could, with the power of technology, you could share your screen with the person and just watch animals playing. So bring up a video of animals playing, and you're watching that video together, right? So there might be some music with those animals. So just appreciating, think about what kind of active activities you can do, but don't disregard the passive activities, because we don't need to have stimulation every single part of the day. Sometimes we just like to sit back and take it easy. It could be listening to an audiobook. And I noticed I was doing some research the other day in regards to books. And so this is really good for you, Kim.
yeah.
I was, because reading has a lot of rhythm attached to it, right? And again, there's the tone, the volume, and of course that rhythm that's attached to reading. So there's many poetry books out there that you can even link onto that have those, those fun little rhythms to it. And again, you could either sit there in person doing it if you're within that person's bubble, or you could just log on and listen to those little poems together, something short, right? And can be very, very engaging with the person. Yeah,
These are great ideas, Sandra. I really appreciate the spectrum of ideas. And as you point out, the going from physical, mental, social, passive, there's so many different ways to consider what constitutes an activity. I would love, does anyone have any questions for Sandra? Or if you don't want to ask them now, you can feel free to contact her directly at Alzheimer Society Grey-Bruce.
I've got a quick question.
Sure, Liz.
I am not caring for anyone with dementia, but I wondered, and you mentioned at the beginning, Sandra, that some caregivers need some help, particularly at this time in doing this. And so I'm wondering if there's some kind of a network that we could be plugged into to know, well, maybe that caregiver would like just a little bit of help, and you could take the person for a walk or something. I live in Ayton, and so, if there was anybody in Ayton, for instance, one of my neighbors, I think, would enjoy that, but it's a bit of an unusual family. And I'm reluctant to appear to be interfering. They're not library goers either. But I'm wondering if there's some kind of a network where you could plug us into to say, those people, that person wouldn't mind, you're taking that person for a walk or dropping by with a muffin for them or something like that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for asking that, Liz. So just recently we've received a grant for a volunteer program to do just that. So you can be in the database, and I can connect you with Jennifer Legg, who's our volunteer coordinator. And what would happen is she would do some orientation with you, and you would then facilitate activities for people living with dementia in their homes.
Right.
So just as I went over just now with various activities you could do over online, and maybe if it so happens that the individual does live in Ayton, and you can still maintain your social distancing by wearing a mask and so forth, going for a walk with them if that's an option. So, but it's not really a requirement for you to be out, of course, in contact with that person. It's really about being part of this program and supporting individuals and their family members through this. Does that sound interesting, of interest to you?
Well, I'd like to talk to Jennifer about it, yes. Because certainly the caregivers, particularly in these times, probably need relief more than they normally would have. And they also can't drop their partners off at a day program.
So I appreciate you asking that question. Is that something that's helpful for you too, Sherry? Is that something that that might be worth it for you to investigate? Well, and that's mainly from, not that you have to volunteer, but maybe you're supporting somebody with Alzheimer's disease and would like to contact the Alzheimer Society to be a part of the program, so that some support, some of our volunteers could support you.
Yeah, I have contacted, and they contacted my mom, but unfortunately she wasn't receptive to it. So
okay,
she doesn't live with me. My mom and dad live in Durham, so it's just started, so it's progressing.
Yeah, that's the hard piece, right? Is that the whole accepting of help. So don't give up on your mom in getting.
Well, I was just thinking, we can go out and buy her these things. We can just keep unfolding her tea towels and ask her to fold them, or coloring books and different things, right?
Yeah, and
They're not tech savvy, so they can't do anything. It's just, and neither my brother and I live there, so it's tough.
So, and that's where the library kits can be a help, in that you can experiment with things. So it may be that she doesn't connect to the tea towels this time you take out the kit, but she connects with the dog photos, or she connects with the rubber tip dartboard that you can actually just drop the darts on and have it go in, or she connects with some of the textures and fabrics that we've got in the fabric box. And that way you can say, you know what, this is a consistent favorite. She really likes this. Or the sandpaper and the wooden block. She just loves that. Like, I remember when my son was very young, he connected with rubbing corn cobs on a piece of wood for days. So sometimes it is, as Sandra was saying, a very unexpected activity that leads to a lot of pleasure. And because it doesn't matter if you have to leave it and come back, you can come back to it. And that's when you get it for yourself. That's when you say, you know what, it's worthwhile for us. Let's get a piece of sandpaper and a block of wood, leave it at the house. And sometimes when she's feeling, fractious, get her to sand off the edges,
And really,
So
when you think about it, with your knowledge and understanding about the disease, even if your mother doesn't have the insight into her disease process, by you learning about the disease, you're providing her support without her even realizing that you're doing so, right?
Yeah.
Kim, how long can somebody keep the kits from the library?
Each kit is out on loan for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And if there's no holds on it, there can be a renewal, I believe. No, there's no renewals on these, but you can bring it back and try another kit, or you can bring it back and take it out again. So we're trying to make it so that as many people as possible, because there's quite a bit of interest in them. We want to be sure that everyone gets a chance to try them. But I also am aware that there may be some that people want to take out more than once, because there's 2 or 3 activities that they connect with. But it's something like, if it's a dartboard, you're not necessarily going to go out and buy a dartboard. We're also hoping to add 2 more kits. This is a pilot process at the moment. And the other thing that I'm particularly interested in is a kit for more advanced dementia. So it's more sensory than a lot of figuring things out. Puzzles may not be useful anymore. Coloring books may not be useful, but it may be that just a bag with, squishy material in it, or things that you find might be useful. So we're playing with that, and we'll part of that will depend on the reception from the public. If we find people are finding them useful, we'll keep going.
So I should just share, when you're doing an activity with your person, as I said, always invite them. Would you like to? But also at the end of the activity, thank them. Thank you so much for your help. That way they feel appreciated, right?
Yeah.
So don't forget to thank them.
Some wonderful, wonderful information for us, Sandra. We need to leave it there. We've been almost an hour, which is, so bad of us, but it's been so helpful. I really appreciate it. I'd love to follow up with you another time. And Liz and Sherry, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact either West Grey Library or Sandra directly at the Alzheimer Society of Grey-Bruce. And one of us will get back to you with the best information we can provide. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate everybody attending, and this will be recorded and should be up on our YouTube site in a few days.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.